And lastly, we can conquer our sin. We can cover our sin, we can confess our sin, and we can conquer sin. This isn't just a never-ending battle of tripping over stones and brush. There's actually a point where God says, conquer it, overcome it. Does he say you'll be perfect? No. But you can conquer it. The secret of victory over sin is found in the phrase, 1 John 1:7, walk in the light. To walk in the light means to be open and honest, to be sincere. Paul prayed in Philemon 1:10 that his friends might be sincere and without offense. So as we close here, I want to leave you with this. What does the word sincere mean? Well, it comes from two Latin words. If you remember last week, I talked about how sincerity isn't enough by itself, right? The doctor sincerely operated on the wrong leg. But he was sincere. He did it with all of his heart. Yeah, but it was the wrong leg. Sincerity has to be coupled with truth, otherwise sincerity means nothing, right? Here's what sincere means and what it comes from. It's a Latin word. It's two words, sin and cere. And what it was used to describe sculptors who were sculpting out of marble or stone. And when a sculptor had messed up or had a bad stone or something else but had worked on it, rather than get a new one, they would take wax. They would melt the wax and they would put it in the cracks or any of the divots or anything that wasn't nice, and then they would shape it and the bust would look perfect, and then they would sell it. Here's the problem. If you bought one of those busts and you went up and set it out in front of your home, once the heat of the sun came and hit it, it would melt the wax. And then all of a sudden, all of the cracks and imperfections were there for everyone to see. Sin means without. Cere means wax. C-E-R-E. C-E-R-E. Without wax. So what would happen is the more dependable, the sculptors with integrity would advertise next to their sculpting, this sculpting is sincere, without wax. So to be sincere means to be authentic, it's quality. It means that there's nothing that when the heat of life comes, it's going to reveal any cracks. Paul says, I want you to be sincere and without offense. Here's how you get to that. Obedience to God's word is our proof of our love for him. Isn't that what John said? If you obey his word, it is proof that you love him. There are three motives for obedience, however. We can obey out of fear, we can obey because we need to, and we can obey because we want to. A slave obeys out of fear. A slave obeys because they're afraid of what their master will do if they don't. So many Christians have a walk with God like that. I'm afraid I'm going to be sent to hell. I'm afraid he's not going to bless my family. I'm afraid that if I don't go to church, then good things won't happen to me. You know how many Christian believers in America believe that they obey God and they love God and they're obeying him from a spirit of fear? The second is we obey out of a position of need. You obey the rules of your employer when you go to work because you need that paycheck. You don't have to obey. You don't have to, right? There's no fear there, but you need that money. And so there's, I have to obey, I need to obey, I want to obey. And the third and final one is I want to obey. And God and John here is calling us into that kind of a relationship with Christ. He says this is what it is to be a Christian. And if we look at our children, once again, our child goes from having to obey, you have to sit here and eat your food, you have to do this, to growing up and needing to obey, right? If any of you have teenagers, if your kid wants to use the car, they need to be pretty good, right? If they want to stay out later, past a curfew you've given them, they need to show responsibility. And so obedience often comes from a teenager's heart out of a need to obey. I need to obey mom and dad. I don't have to, but I need to. And I can tell you from personal experience, and I've spoken of my father a bunch, but in my life, my father loved my brother and I in such a way that once I hit the 18, 19, 20s, I no longer had to obey him, and I no longer needed to obey him. I was moving out on my own. I had stuff of my own and could make decisions on my own, and yet I wanted so desperately to make him proud and to obey him. Because he had built in me a relationship and cultivated a relationship with me in which I wanted to obey what he told me. Because there is a sense and a belief that life would go right for me if I did, even if I didn't see it the same way he saw it. This is what it looks like to walk with the Lord. If you're at the beginning of your walk with God and it feels like you have to obey, just understand that God is not wanting you to stay in that relationship with him. He's wanting you to move to the want to obey. But it doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come because of a sermon. It comes through time, spending time with him, continuing to walk with him, trusting him, and walking in the light.